Hey, this is Brent with Lykins Motorsports. These are Gen 2 Coyote cylinder heads, and the goal for this video is to get these puppies assembled. We'll see how that goes. It's a lot of work and a lot of measuring. So we've got our new SI stainless valves. I got a full set of 32 for both heads. And I got the valve seals out. We did a good wash on these heads and checked all the oiling passages, got the plugs out and everything. So we're going to start by taking some measurements. And I made a spreadsheet because I just can't really find a good spring mic that gets in here and allows me to measure. Everything that I found is either too big in diameter or just way too small. So we're going to have to do it another way, and that's just taking measurements of each individual component. And we'll measure the valve seal. The valve seal is also the spring seat, so we'll measure the thickness of that, and then we'll take a measurement from the valve tip down, and then measure our retainer, and then take some other measurements. So I'm going to print out my spreadsheet and bring that to the bench and start taking measurements. All right, these little things are a pain in the hind end. They really are. There's just not enough room to get in here and work. But I'm pressing on. Here's the spreadsheet that I made to go with all this stuff. And the method to my madness is I'll measure the valve tip to the head. So I will pull up on the valve, and then I'll measure from the tip down to the spring pocket. Then I'll measure my my valve seal thickness right here, and then I'll measure the valve tip to the retainer. So I'll do something like this, measure from here down to there, and then I measure the retainer thickness, so the thickness of this right here. I did it that way, and I was coming up with like 1.550 roughly. So I decided to double check myself, so I can pull up on this and I can measure from here down to, or I'm sorry, from the top of the retainer down to the spring pocket, and then subtract the thickness of the retainer and the thickness of the valve seal. And that got me within a few thousandths. So I know I'm doing it right. There's just no really good way of doing it. I'm used to, spring micrometers where you just separate everything and it spits out the measurement for you. And to compound all that, there's 32 of them to do instead of the normal 16. So I'm not having a lot of fun, but I'm pressing on, and I'm going to start solidifying all my measurements now. All right, I've got all of them measured, and if you drop the valve locks about 17 or 18 times, that's pretty normal. I'm just never done this before, so it's just a whole new challenge for everything. But I got all of them measured, got all the springs, the coil binds measured. So I'm gonna get all of this apart, lay it out together. Keep all the parts together. You usually want to keep valves and locks together because there's tolerances in each one. And then we'll get our valve seals on. All right, so our valve seals are in, and I just use a socket on an extension and hit where the spring rides, tap, 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 and they're on. So we'll get our valves lubed up and get those in, and then start assembly. Okay, and what I'm doing now is just laying out all my springs. We're going to use our spring compressor that locates off of the cam cap bolts. So it'll do essentially 4 at a time. We just need to get everything loaded up. So these springs check at, I think, about 130 on the seat, 300 on open. So plenty of seat load in case we want to turn some some pretty good RPM with some aggressive cams. This is our spring compressor. Just run all these down, and I'll get my coveted 10mm wrench to tighten all this up. And we'll start with probably start with these guys over here, I guess, since we're lined up on those, and get them compressed and get it put together. Now I'm going back and putting the retainers on because I forgot to do it a second ago, and I'll blame that on you guys because you were watching and you didn't tell me. All right, there's one head done, guys. My goodness, I can usually put a set of typical, small block Ford, FE, big block Ford, Cleveland heads together in about an hour. I think I've been an hour and a half just on this one head alone. It is so hard to get to anything. And, if somebody said, hey, you need to put this engine together, but we're going to cut a 10-inch hole in the wall, and you have to do it from outside the wall. I mean, it's ridiculous. So, all cut up, just good times. All right, one done, and one to go. So, pack valve springs, pack retainers, stock locks, and aftermarket valve seals, spring seats. And we are finally done. So I CC'd another chamber, and it's 55.8. I'll have to check back on my notes and see what the other valves were, but had one problem on the valve, so I'm gonna the grooves on it weren't right, so I'm gonna get a replacement for that. But that's all we got to do. So I will tell you what happened. I lost a valve lock down the spark plug tube, and it fell and it wedged itself perfectly in between the hex part of the spark plug and the wall of the tube. I could not get it out to save my life. So I finally took a piece of coat hanger and bent a hook on it and slid it underneath the lock. And it was so stuck that I had to put a pair of vice grips on it and pop it up. And when I popped it up, it took off and nowhere to be found. So I'm gonna have to order a pair of valve locks. But we're done, and that was a ton of work. And it's just tedious, and it's hard to reach things, and it's just tedious work. So if somebody sends me a set of heads to fix up, I'll know what to charge for assembly labor, because it was pretty much ridiculous. All right, guys, I'm going to call this one done, and I don't know if there was much in there for educational purposes, but just documenting a couple of things. And hopefully next week we'll jump back on our all aluminum FE, and we'll knock a bunch of it out. All right, hope you guys are having a good weekend, and talk to you soon.